Hello everyone and welcome to the weird, scary and horrible parts of humanity. Today we are looking at North Korea's desperate and failed attempt to recreate the Olympic Games during the 13th World Festival of Youth and Students, which was ultimately a failure of an event and would have unprecedented and unfathomable consequences on the North Korean economy and the lives of the North Korean people. On the 30th of September 1981, a bidding result was held for the 1988 Summer Olympics. The 1976 Montreal Olympics was a financial disaster for Montreal and Canada, with the city set into a spiralling debt, with the Olympics costing $1.41 billion. A special tobacco tax was brought in to compensate for the financial cost, and Montreal did not pay its debts off until 2006, 30 years after the Olympics took place. Thereby, countries were still very wary about bidding for the Summer Olympics 5 years later, with only Nagoya in Japan and Seoul in South Korea bidding for the Olympics. Seoul won the bid 52 to 27 votes. Perhaps no one was more angry at South Korea winning the Summer Olympics than Kim Il-sung of North Korea. Until 1965, North Korea's GDP and economy were ahead of South Korea, and until the mid-1970s, North Korea's economy was about the same as its southern neighbour, having support from the Soviet Union and China, with South Korea struggling under autocratic puppet governments overseen by the United States of America. South Koreans and Chinese even defected to North Korea during this time. Reduced support from the Soviet Union, with North Korea aligning more with China, as well as increased defense spending equating to 25% of the country's budget, exacerbated North Korea's economic difficulties, and by 1980 it defaulted on its loans except for those from Japan, and by the end of 1979 North Korea's gross national income per capita was a third of South Korea. However, what exacerbated North Korea's economic difficulties the most was juche, the concept of self-reliance brought in by Kim Il-sung in 1974, which intended to show self-reliance within the Asian country. Fidel Castro called on North Korea to be considered as joint hosts of the Seoul 1988 Olympics, and on the 8th and 9th of January 1986 in Lausanne, Switzerland, the International Olympic Committee Vice President Alexandru Spierko held a meeting between North and South Korean Olympic committees. North Korea demanded that 11 of the 23 Olympic sports be held in North Korea, as well as the opening and closing ceremony, with a joint organising committee and a unified Korean team. An informal meeting was held once again on the 15th of January 1986. The International Olympic Committee, however, was only willing to offer half of the events to North Korea, which North Korea was unwilling to accept, as it also wanted the opening ceremony, closing ceremony, a joint organising committee and a unified Korean team, and pulled out of talks. The North Koreans quickly realised that they had made a mistake and were willing to go for 6 sports by March 1986 and just 5 sports by April 1986. In a further meeting between the 10th and 11th of June 1986 in Lausanne, North Korea was offered part of a football tournament, table tennis and archery, which North Korea was unwilling to accept, and it was decided that the Olympics would just be hosted in South Korea in Seoul. Desperate, Kim Il-sung's son Kim Jong-il hitched a plot to frighten countries from attending the South Korean Olympics, with the North Korean government using 2 agents to blow up a Korean Air Boeing 707 on the way from Baghdad, Iraq to Seoul, South Korea, via Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates and Bangkok in Thailand. Korean Air Flight 858 was blown up in a form of state terrorism over the Andaman Sea on the 29th of November 1987 on its way from Abu Dhabi to Bangkok, with 115 people, 104 passengers and 11 crew killed. However, the 1988 Seoul Olympics still went off without a hitch, with North Korea and her ally Cuba boycotting the Olympics, with 159 countries completing, including Aruba, American Samoa, Brunei, the Cook Islands, Maldives, Vanuatu, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as well as South Yemen making their first appearance at the Olympics, and Guam participating at its first Summer Olympics. Ironically, the Soviet Union, North Korea's main ally, finished first in the Olympics with 132 medals, and East Germany second with 102 medals. Allies Hungary, Bulgaria, and Romania finished 6th, 7th, and 9th respectively. South Korea was able to show its economic success to the world, and the event was widely seen as a success, with South Korea making a profit of $300 million, a record profit for a government-run Olympiad, and only the second Olympics since the 1932 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles to make a profit. Kim Il-sung wanted to one-up his South Korean neighbours by hosting the World Festival of Youth and Students. The World Festival of Youth and Students is an international event organised by the World Federation of Democratic Youth and the International Union of Students, and was initially used as Soviet propaganda for foreign audiences during the Cold War. The first version was held in 1947 in Prague in what was Czechoslovakia, and other than being held once in Helsinki in 1962, the event was, until the 21st century, held in Eastern European bloc countries, the Soviet Union and Cuba. However, a delusional Kim Il-sung was determined to make this World Festival of Youth and Students not only rival, but beat South Korea's 1988 Olympics, both in prestige and opulence, attempting to show that North Korea was the better of the two Koreas to the world. For this, North Korea had to build a stadium, but not just any stadium, the Rungado 1st of May Stadium, a stadium occupying 51 acres of Rungra Island in Pyongyang, North Korea, which holds 150,000 people. At the time, it was the biggest stadium in the world, but it is now the second biggest stadium in the world after India's Narendra Modi Stadium. And North Korea would need a hotel for athletes. The Ryunga Hotel's construction began in 1987 and was intended to be the world's tallest hotel, surpassing the Western Stamford and the 7th tallest building in the world at the time. Construction ended up costing $750 million, or 2% of the country's GDP. The hotel was not completed in time, and journalists, athletes, and commentators were put into hotels that were already built. The event cost $4.5 billion, a quarter of North Korea's budget, with Mercedes-Benz cars shipped in and other new buildings built, including skyscraper apartments. Even Soviet Union commentators at the event were frustrated by the ostentatious nature of the event. By contrast, the 1988 Seoul Olympics cost $4 billion, and the cost of this Olympics would not be surpassed until the 2000 Sydney Olympics, which cost $6.6 billion. The 8-day event began on the 1st of July 1989, with North Korea opening its doors to the world for the first time, including American journalists who travelled to North Korea, the first Americans in the country, other than defectors, since the Korean War. At the time, this was the largest World Festival of Youth and Students, with 22,000 people participating from 177 countries, including 100 people from the United States of America. The slogan for the event was "For Anti-Imperialist Solidarity, Peace and Friendship," with each day of the festival devoted to opening ceremonies, peace, independence and national liberation struggles, environmental crisis, friendship and international solidarity, rights of youth and students, day of the host country, and finally the closing ceremonies. Over 1,000 events took place, from round-table political discussions to solidarity rallies, plenary sessions, sports matches including circus acts, juggling and acrobatics, artistic performances, film showings, and visits around Pyongyang. North Korea attempted to show a perfect society, banning people with disabilities and little people. They also tried to take Western journalists on tours of the city and North Korea, with Kim Il-sung trying to show foreigners how successful the country was under a complete facade. However, North Korea struggled to contain foreigners, with human rights demonstrations taking place amongst competitors, and Danish activists during the opening ceremony unfurled a banner criticising North Korea's human rights abuses. Now, usually North Korea would send such individuals to a concentration camp for 3 generations, but with the world looking at the country, 2 of the 3 activists were taken into custody before being released. Also, much to the embarrassment of North Korea's government, this was the first time that North Korean citizens were exposed to Westerners and Western music, with citizens dancing around with athletes on beatboxes to Western music. This was despite the government organising interviews with journalists and telling members of the public what to say, particularly in regard to complimenting the Kim regime. Perhaps most significant as a piece of political propaganda for North Korea was the participation of student Lim Su-kyung, who attended the event to represent the Jeondae-hop, now known as Hancheon-yon, a pro-North Korea student organisation in South Korea, without obtaining travel permission from the South Korean government. Lim spent 10 days travelling to North Korea via Germany and Japan, staying there for 45 days, meeting Kim Il-sung before returning to South Korea via the Korean demilitarized zone, back into South Korea on the 15th of August 1989, becoming the first civilian to openly cross the demilitarized zone freely since the Korean War. Upon her return to South Korea, she was arrested for violating the National Security Act and sentenced to prison for 12 years, commuted to 5 years, before serving 3 years in prison before being released under a special amnesty. She was pardoned by South Korean President Kim Dae-jung in 1999. However, from a political propaganda perspective for North Korea, Lim Su-kyung was a dream come true. However, when the event ended after 8 days, North Korea must have realised its mistakes, with Western journalists labelling the event a complete failure. By the end of 1989, it was clear that North Korea would have been better burning a quarter of its GDP, with the Berlin Wall falling on the 10th of November 1989 and the Eastern European Communist bloc falling like dominoes throughout the next 18 months. This culminated with the fall of the Soviet Union on the 25th of December 1991. By this stage, North Korea's economy was completely and utterly broken, and it had just lost its major ally, which truly showed the fallacy and errors of Juche, as the country was brought to its knees when $4 billion could have saved a hell of a lot of lives, as the country faced its biggest test since its creation. By 1992, food under the public distribution system was 20% less than what it was in 1986, down to just 420 grams a day of rice on average, with the country adopting the slogan, "Let's eat 2 meals a day" by 1994, when the country officially entered famine. By 1997, this was down to just 128 grams of rice per day, and only 6% of the country was fed under the public distribution system. People resorted to eating insects, their own animals, stray animals, and even cannibalism, with as many as 3.5 million North Koreans killed between 1994 and 1998, with the country not requesting aid until August 1995. However, in reality, until the Kim regime falls, we will most likely never know the true impact of this famine. By this stage, however, Kim Il-sung, who was seen as a god of the country, was replaced by his son Kim Jong-il, as Kim Il-sung had died on the 8th of July 1994, with his country a failed state. Perhaps the biggest representation of the failure of both the World Festival of Youth and Students and the North Korean economy was the Ryugyong Hotel, which was never completed, with construction stopped in 1992. Construction did not resume until 2008, with the exterior completed in 2011. It is now used for LED propaganda light shows, which were fitted in 2018. It holds the Guinness World Record for the tallest unoccupied building. And as for those skyscraper apartments, today no one wants to live in them, because you have to take the elevator to get up there, and there is very little electricity within Pyongyang and North Korea. So for the people living in those skyscrapers, they are stuck there, unable to leave and unable to move because nobody else will take them. Perhaps where North Korea is far more successful, both in catering towards foreigners and trying to show itself as a country rather than a pariah of a state, burning billions of dollars on sporting events and nuclear weapons, is when it actually participates at foreign Olympics. This was most seen at the 2012 London Olympics, where the country won 7 medals, 4 gold and 3 bronze, with Kim Un-guk gaining a world record in lifting 327 kilograms, and the country placed 21st on the medal tally ahead of countries like Canada and Brazil. While at the 1992 Olympic Games in Barcelona, Spain, North Korea won 9 medals, 4 gold and 5 bronze, placing 16th on the medal tally ahead of countries like Japan, the Netherlands and Brazil. Indeed, the 13th World Festival of Youth and Students is seen as the last attempted hurrah by North Korea before the complete failure and breakdown of its economy by Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un. Outside of events like the Pyongyang Marathon, which is open to all amateur runners, and one-off football matches with North Korea playing, most infamously the South Korea vs North Korea 1-1 draw at the Kim Il-sung Stadium for the 2018 AFC Women's Asia Cup qualification, as well as the Collision of Korea wrestling match which took place at the Mungrado 1st of May Stadium between the 28th and 29th of April 1995, featuring American and Japanese wrestlers with Muhammad Ali as the guest of honor. North Korea has never hosted another international sporting event, and perhaps from the colossal failure that was the 13th World Festival of Youth and Students, it has learnt its lesson. Thank you for watching. Please do yourself a favour and hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to inform you when new videos come out. Also, why not hit that like button and leave a nice comment? It helps more than you know and your support is truly appreciated. Until next time, stay awesome, stay classy, be kind to everyone you meet, and have an amazing day.